it's not that easy to describe safety planning in a few words, at least not for me. But I think real good safety planning is after you decide together with the family what is really the danger in the family or the worries, then it's much easier to decide what should be your safety goal. And then you're brainstorming together with the family about how can we make sure things are going okay for the child, even though the father might drink or he might be very irritated. Or so it always talks about planning, about looking at stressors, looking at triggers, what might happen, who can call somebody, who can stop then the father, will he listen to this guy, or and a whole set of checks and balances around that. Because in the old days we would say, actually in old days the safety plan was, do you promise never to do it again, and will you go to therapy? And then we thought, now we made a great safety plan. The parents promised not to do it again, and they are going to therapy. What could go wrong? Well, it went wrong a lot of times, of course. So now we're looking more like, that might be a good idea. And what if it doesn't work? So what's the backup? What's the backup plan? Because we're more realistic that, for instance, with domestic violence, just after the incident, most parents will say they will separate forever, and 80% will be back together maybe the next week even, or maybe they already texting each other that they still love each other. So with safety planning we say, we know most people get together at one point, so how can we make it safe then? Instead of saying, oh yeah, sure, I believe you when you say you will never see him again. Okay, goodbye. So it's a more critical way of looking, but you're doing this in a very supportive way. Developed after the Maori grandmothers had a sort of protest march saying that they were sick of that the government was removing their children into care without talking to the family, and they wanted to have the first right to decide an alternative plan. And actually, it's a very logical idea. I mean, it's more strange to see why we would not talk to the family first if a child is in problems or the parents have issues. I think I think parents have a right, or the family has a right to first decide what will happen to the child if this plan is safe enough. But we have now a big problem in the Western society that our culture is like based on privacy, isolation, sort of the right of parents to raise their children in isolation sometimes. And so in New Zealand, the model was developed that parents had the right to talk with their family before removal. They were fighting for that. But in the Western countries, Holland, Belgium, where I teach, probably Finland also, families are fighting for the right not to talk with each other. Maybe even child protection would say, yes, we want to have everybody around the table, that's safer. And then the parents say, no, our family is all bad and crazy, we cannot talk to this family. So in fact, they are fighting for the opposite right as the New Zealand, and we still call it family group conferencing. But it's in a whole different culture. Actually, in our Western culture, we have to find much more answers to how can we motivate parents to share the worries with the network. And I think when I did the conference last week in Belgium with Kelly de Koek from Olmsted, I discovered that in Minnesota, and I think most places in the United States, the family has a right to be notified within 30 days if a kid is coming into care. You have to call all the family members, not just the parents. And in Holland, Scandinavian countries, the parents can say, no, you don't have to contact anybody. Just keep him in the residential facility. That's good for me. So that's a whole different way of looking at it. So it's not in our laws that the child has rights on his family. In our laws, only the parents have rights. And which is, in fact, detrimental to themselves, because at that moment, in their stress and their fear, they cannot decide that it would be good for them to talk with their family. They are just too frightened to do that. But in fact, because of this right, and because we as a professionals give the parents that right, and as our legal system, then in fact we are harming the whole family and the child, because then we're saying residential facility is a good way to grow up. We don't need to investigate the whole family if the parents don't want to. So that's a very weird situation in the Western society, actually. Because I think we have driven away from like a family-centered society into a very privatized, isolated way of growing for a lot of people.
And then there is also some